Hello and a very warm welcome to the viewers and the listeners of the Zero Filter podcast. Today, in our brand new episode of Zero Filter podcast, we have a very special guest who is going to be sharing his stories, his insights, thousands of miles away from where we have our setup. We have Rob Greenlee, who is a Hall of the Fame podcaster and media innovator who has spent 25 plus years in shaping the future of audio from Microsoft and Podcast One to founding Spoken Life Media and Adore Creator Network. Rob helps creators grow, monetize, and thrive in the AI era. So, a very warm welcome to Rob. Thank you so much for coming to Zero Filter Podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Prince. I appreciate the invite, and I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation about wide-ranging topics. But I think at the end of the day, it's mostly about being a creator in this world of noise, right?
Yeah, definitely, Rob. And I believe your insights matter a lot because you've been a very, I would say, experienced player in the domain of creating something of your own, expressing yourself in the best possible manner, and most importantly, staying relevant in the evolving times wherein we have different things coming up. So I'm very excited for this conversation. And before we begin about the art of storytelling and how people can get better at expressing themselves, I would first of all like to start with a story that I read in your bio, which was about you being a part of one of the Guinness Book of World Records. You've been a part of managing one of the Guinness Book of World Records, and you've been a key part in that. Would be great if you could share a bit about that experience of yours.
Yeah, that was a very early part of my career in marketing. Actually, I built the world's largest glass of orange juice, or Florida orange juice, back in 1997, and it was really part of a synergistic kind of a marketing campaign that I was working on to with the goal of just encouraging people to drink more orange juice at the time, because I thought drinking orange juice was a healthy thing to do at the time. Though I have to say now, maybe not so much, as we've all come to find out that orange juice has a lot of sugar in it. But at the time, that was the understanding that I had, was to create a comprehensive campaign with billboards, trial in grocery stores and TV, radio, all the forms of media back in that era, back in the 90s, that was so popular and so familiar to large numbers of people. So it was really kind of a focal point that I could drive a much bigger kind of a marketing campaign to encourage people to drink more orange juice. So why not build the world's largest glass of orange juice and have it tour the country and go to events and sample orange juice right out of the world's largest glass of orange juice. So I basically contracted with a couple of people that could help me architect this thing, or to actually build it. It was about 9.5 feet tall and held almost 750 gallons of orange juice. And the whole glass was kind of built around this concept of keeping it chilled, keeping it cool. So I had to build a cooling system that was part of the base, and I was going to set it up in grocery stores. So obviously it had to be able to be transported through the back door, the front door, or grocery store. And so it really kind of was a crazy idea. And I also took it to like produce marketing conferences and events, and filled it up with orange juice, as well as filled it up with grapefruit juice, which was also a big part of the Florida citrus kind of product line of sorts. So Tropicana is the one that provided me all the orange juice. So it would come in these big bag in a box kind of thing. It would be like 200 or 300 gallons of orange juice in one bag of box. I'd have to pump it into the glass, but yeah, it was all part of a big kind of marketing campaign that I was doing back in those days. But it was pre podcasting. But I did build the first Florida Citrus website at floridajuice.com as well back in that era as well. So
Okay, this sounds very interesting, and I think an important idea which comes out of from this experience is uh, having the courage to take on tasks that are unusual or sound impossible, because uh, I believe starting with, or let's say being a part of something like this would have required a lot of hard work, a lot of courage, especially when knowing that this is something unconventional that you probably did at that time. Uh, so, what lesson do you think you could share with the listeners, the viewers of this podcast from that experience?
well, I think the big takeaway for me is it I think in things that you do in your life, you kind of have to think big, and look at things as not impossible. And I think that's the thing. If you have a terrific idea, and it fits into a synergistic strategy, and that's another takeaway too. I think there's a lot of corollaries to what I learned in being the manager or the product manager of getting this whole thing pulled together. Is that it's a lot like creating a podcast, right? So you're creating a focal point that you can drive attention to, but also has other elements to it too that you can kind of synergize marketing and promotion and other elements to it. But you have to think creatively outside of the box to be able to create something that had never been created before, and that's hard. I mean, it was a challenge at times, and there was a lot of risk in creating this thing too, because if you can imagine building a kind of like a 9 foot tall acrylic glass that looked like the shape of a glass from scratch, how would you build that, right? And would you build it in a way that you felt confident that it would be safe, because you put that much liquid into something? There's a risk that it could, break apart or explode in a grocery store and hurt people. So you had to have an engineering kind of mindset to it, and I think that applies to creating a podcast or creating content too. Is you kind of have to think about the implications of what you're doing too, and be concerned about its impact on other people. Is it going to harm people or is it going to help people? And I think that there's a lot of correlation between that process and and the long-standing impacts of that is that there were math books in the state of Florida that were created, or not, the math books weren't created, but there were sections in math books for students in the state of Florida that had a math problem in those math books that featured the world's largest glass of orange juice. So, and a math program like, how many oranges did you have to squeeze to fill this glass of orange juice? So the impacts of what you do in projects like this can be wide ranging and beyond what you think is likely to actually happen. So I think that's the big takeaways. You have to be prepared for unusual kind of results and be open to it.
Mhm. Okay. And I think this is something which probably towards the eastern side of the globe doesn't seem to be very common of a thing. Experimenting with new ideas or creation of something that has not been in existence before. Probably more of innovation also has been done in the western side of the globe, which is uh, although the eastern side is catching up with that as well.
Yeah, and I can send you a photo of it too, and it's if you want to publish it up into the screen so people can see it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Uh,
Yeah.
and Rob, you talked about the fact that whatever you do, would create an impact. And if you're taking on something impossible or big, then its impact is definitely going to be, uh, felt at a bigger scale. Uh,
Yeah.
I would like to get your insight on, since you have been a part of the media industry for a pretty long time, something that many people often struggle with or would like to gain an understanding about is the art of storytelling. How do they master this? Because often what happens is somebody is, let's say, giving a presentation in the corporate. They are very good at numbers with the technical stuff and all, but they are unable to relate or keep the interest of the audience intact, be it anybody who is creating something online or somebody who is expressing something in front of, let's say, some people. uh, how does someone create that skill of storytelling?
Yeah, I think it's a really important topic right now because there's so many elements of this, and it gets back to being able to actually connect with humans and connect with people. And humans are fundamentally wired to connect with stories. And stories, if told properly, create context for understanding and context for connection, human to human connection. And those are very, very important characteristics now in this world of so much noise and so much information being shared and so many voices out there, which is all terrific. But being able to tell a story that actually is interesting and intriguing and brings in elements of emotions, and that can swing positive or negative. It can in things that are memorable, that can be authentic, that will ultimately build trust. I think it's so important to build a personal brand now, and trust is key to that process. But what really rings with people is the ability to bring a little humor, bring a little kind of frank insight, uh, some level of human disclosure, that can, you know, humanize you and influence people and inspire people to just kind of open up and be real and who they are. Um, the storytelling process is more mechanical. It's more like creating a hook of sorts of why someone should care about a topic, is to create kind of an intriguing question and then answer it over a period of time in the content that takes that viewer or listener on an emotional kind of roller coaster ride of sorts, and sharing the wins, sharing the losses, and trying to bring a level of humor and humility to that process that maybe people will connect with and relate to. And I think that is where we are right now in the content creation industry. And I think it's a skill that isn't necessarily comes natural to most people. I think you do have to study it, and I know I'm continuing to do this myself, is to understand the complexity of doing a good story and really thinking about those levels of process in that can create that kind of outcome. And I think the really big content creators now on YouTube, primarily right now, are leading the charge on this. And I think it's all relevant topics to podcasting too. So as you think about creating content now, it's really every podcast should be a storytelling podcast. It's just how long are the stories?
Okay, and I think this would apply by and large to anybody who wants to be better at presenting, or uh, be presenting better themselves in an interview, or let's say giving a presentation in front of a team, or anything. If you're able to relate with the audience, if you have that ability to bring in relativity, because I read Dale Carnegie's book. He was in the US only. His book mentioned that whatever you share must have some relation with the audience. If you are, let's say, going to a room full of people you are unfamiliar with, then do a research, for example, about the locality they live in, the weather in that locality that time, or let's say some recent news that has come in that area, which could be relevant and which the people would be aware of, which could be a basis for starting the conversation. So. Uh, how do you think that in today's era these storytelling aspects are relevant, or is it a thing that used to matter uh, probably in the previous generation in the 20th century, or does it still matter as an important skill today?
Yeah, I think the honest answer to that is that storytelling has always been really important, you know, and it's not just in the media. I think it's also in people's personal lives. It's also, you know, it's really getting in touch with how all of us as human beings experience life and can translate that into being able to communicate it to others. I mean, if you go back to the very early era of humans before we had technology and before we had media, that's how information was shared with others multi generationally. So you have this whole concept of lore and stories that passed on knowledge. And so we're fundamentally wired for this process of telling stories. Like what I'm telling you right now is a form of a story. It may not be a story like what maybe you think of automatically when you think of storytelling. I think most people think of storytelling as like a drama or a movie or something like that. But really, what storytelling is in the new media space is being able to be genuine, authentic, real, and share um, topics that come from experience, come from inside, also come from things that you've researched and learned. And so you're basically applying that research and that understanding of maybe some sort of change mechanism, and you're bringing a human storytelling element to it that is um, kind of more of a narrative experience, right? It's not a, you know, an effects jack kind of a thing where you're just going through bullet points. You're actually speaking fluidly. You're speaking from a level of passion. Your voice goes up and down. Your body language is open and friendly, and but at times maybe it's very emotional too. So if you think about movies and you think about TV shows or whatever, the producers of that or the authors of the scripts for those shows understand those threads of complexity of characters. And now, granted, most of that is fabricated stuff, but they're actually using the same principles of trying to drive real um, feeling in their audience by actions and facial expressions and how you speak. So it's a very complex thing, and there is a whole kind of science behind this too. And if you just do a search in like a platform like a YouTube or whatever around how to tell a good story, I think you can really get some insights into what I'm talking about here.
Mhm. I think there are many TED Talks as well, and probably this is the reason some speeches are remembered for a lifetime, and a few speeches are just like
Yeah,
forgotten.
yeah, yeah. It's a difference. Yeah.
And since you have had a very long journey in the media industry, how do you think that the shift is happening, particularly in this domain? Because the reason I'm asking this question is today we see a lot of AI generated content. We see like the deep fake videos in which somebody who is even not physically present or doing something, he could be sitting in the video, just let's say having a dinner with somebody. So it is all AI generated. So, and a few years down the line, going forward, I believe it is going to be definitely becoming more and more powerful. So, how do you see the media industry evolving because of all this, which is happening right now? Probably a lack of differentiation between originality and fake content is increasing day by day. So, how do you think this is going to be unfolding in the future?
Yeah, my view on it is a little contrary to I think the general consensus out there right now. I think there's a lot of fear being created around AI content. That somehow it's not very good. It's not going to, it's not going to reach audience. So why do we care about it? But there's also a lot of people that are expressing very emotional reactions to the influx of AI generated content, right? Um, but the truth on the ground and the reality is that AI created content is here and it's going to be with us. It's going to be a companion on our journey in the future. The AI that we see today is, and I've heard many people say this, so it's not something new, is the worst AI content that we'll ever see, is right now, right? Because it's going to continue to get better and better. And I believe, and I'm in the middle of creating a new podcast show myself called Spoken Human, that is going to take a hybrid model where I'm going to have a AI avatar clone of myself will create some of my episodes, and then other episodes are going to be created by me, being on the microphone and on the camera. So I'm going to be playing around with this, but I think that's what the future looks like. Is that all of us, if we want to be online creators, and I think it may be an issue even if you work a job or you have a career that involves creating content online, is that you're going to take a hybrid model. AI is increasingly moving into our content creation process, right? And that's just the fact. It's been happening for the last 2 years. I'm seeing the wave of it come, and it's only penetrating more of the content creation process. And we're already seeing companies pop up that are using it very rapidly to create new podcasts and to create content. And that's only going to accelerate. There's a lot of people that don't like to hear that, but that's going to happen more. And I think for you as a content creator, if you want to survive in this new world, is that you have to be as good as you can as a human creator to compete, to really keep up and compete with AI generated content, because AI generated content will be potentially better than a human. And that's, is it 2 years from now when it reaches that point? It's hard to know right now, but it's also feels like it's inevitable. It's coming. And what are we going to do as human creators? I think we're seeing it already start to happen on YouTube, where AI generated content is um, garnering huge audiences. There's this movement around faceless videos that is using AI to create all the content, and I see it every day on my YouTube um, uh, platform, on my TV. Those videos generate hundreds of thousands of views. So it's coming, and it's already good enough to drive interest. So I think as a content creator, or as a marketing person, as just a person that wants to build a successful career, I think understanding how to utilize AI to create content and clone your identity of sorts, and have that in your back pocket to use if it makes sense to do that and to learn how to do it, because I I think that's what the future looks like, good or bad.
I think many people are afraid of AI generated content. They probably perceive it in a negative way. Uh, that it is probably not, and
Well, they see it as a threat. Yeah.
yeah, and we can see like online there would be videos that criticize AI generated content. Where are we going and all that. Uh, One of the examples, as you mentioned, is the inability to differentiate between somebody who is sitting and doing it, as you would be doing in your podcast. It's difficult for people to judge whether it's really you or the AI clone. I saw a few ads. I don't know if it works in the US or not. Here in India, I have seen a few ads in which there are celebrity generated AI ads in which you get clippings of celebrities who would promote your product, and they say that it is licensed by those celebrities, so you can use those small clips as if the celebrity would be endorsing your product.
Yeah, I don't think that, you know, not well, let me back up. Not all those AI generated ads have the support of the talent behind it, because it's very easy to kind of hijack a person's voice. And I see it happen a lot with Joe Rogan, where someone will clone his voice because he has a lot of content out there. And it's the same thing with me. I've created, thousands of hours of online content that's out there. It would be very easy for someone to clone me. And I think that's going to happen. And I don't know that I'm so important that someone would actually clone me, but I'm just saying that these really, really big creators really have that issue. And most of the large kind of TV stars or celebrities out there are getting themselves scanned of sorts to be able to create digital avatars, and they're going to license that likeness to platforms. That's been happening behind the scenes. Those celebrities don't say that they're doing that publicly, but it's been going on for maybe over a year now, where because there's going to be studios that pop up that will license their AI avatars to perform in movies and TV shows that will be completely generated by AI.
And I think an example. I think an example of this could be, or maybe since I am actively involved in the teaching profession, I could see probably in the future sometime a day will come when students can easily get access to the license loan of the trainer, so that exactly the trainer would be sitting and explaining the topic. It would just be like AI clone explaining whatever you would want to understand at that time. Clearing how your and all.
Yeah, because it's easy now to uh, to have AI generate the narrative script that you might say. And I know that I've played around with this to some degree to tell Chat GPT to write this in my voice, right, with my inflections and my words, right, that I would typically use to describe this, and it does a pretty good job of that. So it's I did it for our conversation today. I was just curious. I mean, I was planning on just doing it off the cuff. I'm not reading anything verbatim into my answers here, but I was just curious how it would interpret your questions and create Rob's thoughts on that question, right? And it did a decent job. I mean, I'm still at a point where I have to go in and actually make textual edits to it, because it doesn't. It's still at a point where it doesn't really go into the level of depth that I would go into. It's still kind of at the surface level, but if it really gets trained on me and the thousands of podcasts that I've participated in or created myself, going back to 1999, which it could do, it's going to understand at a very deep level of how I speak and how I talk, the knowledge, still at a superficial level, but getting deeper and deeper and deeper, where it will be able to probably pretty close replicate me in another human probably will not be able to tell.
Mm. So just now I was sort of you took a bite if it is actually Rob sitting in front of me, or is it like AI clone?
Right. I mean, I could have just read verbatim what Chat GPT wrote for me to answer your questions, but I don't feel like that's the right thing to do. So I think I take what it gives and I interpret it myself into my own language. But that's where the difference is today.
And probably this line is going to become thinner and thinner going forward, wherein the differentiation is going to be difficult. And something that really intrigued me about you was what often happens is once we are into a profession, the profession evolves, new tech comes, and people stop adopting to whatever new updates are happening in the relevant industry. For example, when the computer technology came in the 1990s or so, there was a lot of fear among people who were not, you know, habitual of using computer devices, and many of them ended up losing their jobs as well because they were not able to or not willing to adapt. But I can clearly see that you have been in this industry for a very, very long time, and still you are using AI tools more, I would say, frequently or with more interest than somebody who is way younger. They're like we are just right now in our comfort zone. We don't want to adapt. So what drives that I would say enthusiasm in you, that you keep adapting, which is leading to this experimenting with the AI tools.
Yeah, I think I mean, if I go back to the very early days of how I got involved in podcasting and how I got involved in creating radio, is that it came out of just a genuine fascination and interest in the evolution and the development of technology. The nationally syndicated radio show that I started back in 1999 was all about the growth and development of the World Wide Web and the internet. And so that was the mindset that I had back then, was that I just was curious. You know, and you have to have a curious mind to want to keep learning and keep evolving what you're doing over a period of time as technology evolves, because that's what sparked me to actually get involved in online content. Even back then, you know, back towards the end of the .com explosion, and that was the time frame when online media started to be adopted. Right? I mean, it was very crude and rudimentary back then. Most of my audience came out of being on satellite, a radio on the XM satellite radio network, and on about 15 broadcast stations. But I delivered most of my content off of my own servers, because back in those days there weren't like podcast hosting platforms that exist. I'd had to build my own servers, get them co-located in co-location facilities, and run my own software, and get my own bandwidth and all that stuff, because it was very expensive to do what I was trying to do with online media back then without having my own infrastructure. So that's what really drove me in trying to understand how media was going to use technology in the very early years of all this. And so I've been kind of seeing the evolution of this over a long span of time, over 25 years. So I have this context of the past that I can apply to the future. And there's some elements of things that happened in the past that apply to the present and the future that I'm seeing, and that's the growth of video. because back in the early days of podcasting, video was very important as well. And then it kind of faded away as people moved to YouTube, even in the early days of podcasting, because podcasting and YouTube have had a parallel track to each other, and they've always been related to each other, and tangential to each other. Podcasters also used video even back in like 2006, 7 timeframe, 8, 9, 10, and then we saw this explosion of storytelling in podcasting, which happened in about the 2014 timeframe with the serial podcast, and that's what drove everybody to think about podcasting as an audio only medium. And then you had public radio getting more and more into podcasting, commercial radio got more and more into podcasting, and that's what drove the narrative towards audio. And so now we're moving back to being more of a balanced medium, online medium, where podcasting is audio and video again.
Okay, and I believe you've been a part of this amazing journey of podcasting, actually becoming very famous, and probably I think back then we just here in India used to hear people either speaking on the radio or television interviews, wherein two people used to sit, wherein the news anchor would interview somebody, and I think nowadays it has grown to something way bigger. Uh, I would like to ask you about it, somebody who is right there in the beginning of their journey of content creation, or have been, let's say, preparing the content but have not been getting enough success. You've been a part of this whole journey. What would you suggest to somebody who is just starting out or is not able to get that success that they think they deserve in the content generation?
Well, I think it's about setting expectations to some degree, and it's also about knowing the why of your pursuits of doing this. Why are you trying to become a content creator, and help that process will help you refine what you're going to do, right? So if you can get to a point where you understand why you want to do it and what your reasons are. And I think one of the big things that's changing right now is that in the early years of podcasting, it was really more of a passion approach, right? So if I had a passion like I was talking about technology on my radio show, that was my passion at the time. Me as a host, I wanted to learn everything about technology back then. And so I was like a sponge. I would sponge up all of the content that I could find that would be related to that topic. And what I hoped was that passion that I had for creating that technology, internet, web kind of topic area would resonate with others. But I think what we're seeing happen in the marketplace today is that creators that are being successful think about what the audience wants first. And that's a shift, because I spent most of my years thinking about what I wanted to create as a creator and hoping that the audience would gravitate towards what I was creating, right? And fortunately that happened, but increasingly successful creators now have to think about what audience that they want to reach and what are their interests. What is that audience that you want to reach? What is their interests? And you have to be, as a creator, you almost have to be like a chameleon, where you basically build your knowledge based on what someone else wants to learn, not necessarily what you want to learn. Hopefully they're the same, but that may not be the case. Like a person maybe wants to learn how to be, underwater basket weaver or something like that. That could be my passion, but is that really going to connect with anybody in the real world is the question. So increasingly what we're seeing is creators have to do a much of research, right? To find out where audiences are at, follow the zeitgeist of trends of what people's interests are, look at social culture, look at technological kind of changes, and be adaptable. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for creators right now is um, being flexible enough to do content that maybe isn't in your wheelhouse or in your passion areas, because that's the fastest path to growing audience.
Mm. Uh, and I think this shift probably is happening these days a lot because we can see, at least here in India, it's becoming very common of a thing. You can see a creator in almost every home these days. Everybody is, let's say, just having the access to smartphone, to turn on the camera, and then they can upload the content, thinking or aiming to be, uh, let's say, a successful influencer. But probably we are missing something here, that we need to be having the understanding of what the audience wants, instead of just putting the content for the sake of being famous, or becoming more popular.
Yeah, and doing it more for the audience's interests, I think, is the key thing. And your interests as a creator are important in that, but it's also increasingly um, important that you as the creator need to have some some sort of a success metric that you can point to, that audience should listen to you for some valid reason, right? That you've accomplished something, you've done something in the world that is related to that topic, that they can trust as um, a, a believable um, topic expert, right? And that's that's where these areas kind of potentially cross with your passions. But you can become an expert in an area that is, so let's say you don't really connect with politics. I can just use what I mean. There are a lot of people out there that don't like to follow politics, but if politics is very popular with audiences, you might consider doing a show on politics, right? Um, but that's going to take a change of mindset on your part to be able to engulf yourself into something that you really, maybe deeply down, you don't have a passion for. And that's what takes time to build audience around, because you have to build your credibility on that topic, and to reach an audience and a trusted um, presenter of sorts on that particular topic. And sometimes that doesn't happen very fast, and that's why big name celebrities can gather audiences very quickly, is because they've kind of busted through that wall of audience awareness, right? And that audience may be more accepting of them as a creator or a show host, because they have a reputation for something else, right? But if that something else is related to whatever that topic is, and there's huge scale behind that, that can be a big help to them as they adapt and morph their content to be more aligned with their past and their experience. So this is what creates this challenge for new creators, is that they're up against a just a gauntlet of challenges. And that's why we're seeing big name people basically achieve much more rapid success. But that's not necessarily guaranteed, though.
Yeah. And I think
It's a complicated web right now.
Mm. uh, okay. I think there's a concept, or there's a problem, or I would say a mindset. Uh, what happens often is, people who have the knowledge, who have the understanding of the subject, they're not very good at expressing that. Whereas people who don't know a lot about stuff can confidently stand in front of the camera and then start creating content. Uh, Probably researchers have also showed this in the past, that imposter syndrome, or the feeling of not being adequate enough that you can share your knowledge, is something which many knowledgeable creators struggle with as well. Whereas there are many creators who don't have the understanding of the subject. I can share a recent case with you. It happened in India. Somebody was sharing some stock market tips to the people without being qualified, and that influencer had a lot of followers as well. Eventually, the Securities and Exchange Board, which is the regulator of all the stock market activities, penalized that guy and asked him to stop his channel.
Wow.
So
Wow. I guess there's a risk of that, I suppose, right?
probably it's better if the actual people who really have the knowledge are able to gather enough confidence to share the content, instead of people who are not that good at the subject matter but are good at expressing themselves confidently, so they get a mass following pretty much faster than somebody who really deserves that. So what would you suggest to somebody who has the knowledge, who has the expertise, but doesn't have the confidence or the ability to express that in front of people?
I think it's a journey of um, creating a skill, right? Is the best analogy that I can say on that is that it's not it's not always built into your current um, I guess talent or abilities until you start actually exercising those muscles. It's a lot like being like an athlete of sorts. Is that a successful athlete doesn't become successful um, right out of the gate. There's a lot of skills. There's a lot of experience that they need to gain. Yeah, I was a highly competitive basketball player for 13 years, and I draw a lot of correlation to that experience where there's a lot of training, there's a lot of kind of like skills development, there's kind of mental kind of conditioning. There's just a lot of things that you have to go through to be able to create the skill to be successful at it. I think for many years it was a basic thing like how do you set up a video camera, or how do you get good audio? But now it's moved to another level. Those are fairly simple to set up now. And most people can get good quality audio and get good quality video now. Now the conversation has shifted to what are your presentation skills? What are your speaking skills? What are your knowledge area? And how personable are you? How entertaining are you? I'd say that the conversation has shifted more away from the mechanics of creating content and over to more of the human interest area of creating content now. And that's what's really separating people. And so that's the part that you really have to um, spend a lot of time to work on that and to get focused and feel confident and be able to talk on a microphone in a way that makes sense to people. It's not always the same way that you talk to other people in real life, but it can be very similar. And it probably should be very similar to how you speak to people in, calls or in your real life. And that's the magic of this. But it's not an easy path.
Okay. Uh, and I think it applies on camera and off camera, both. Somebody who gets that skill of expressing themselves freely could be good at online, offline, both types of presentations. I've seen people who are pretty good at speaking offline, but whenever the camera turns on, they turn themselves into a totally different person, as if a monotonous tone is there, and they
Yeah.
and they become reserved.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think people, if they haven't done a lot of that, will be nervous, right? Or they'll be unsure of themselves, and maybe they're concerned about saying the wrong thing, right? And just like what you gave an example before, is that a creator starts creating content, and they're creating content that's maybe considered controversial, and that content is flagged somehow or taken down. I mean, a lot of content creators, if they go into topics that the establishment or the government or the platform doesn't approve of, then you can get into trouble with that kind of stuff. So I think that there's hesitation around being maybe too truthful and honest and sharing your unfiltered thoughts. And that's an unfortunate side of what's happening in the world right now, is that we are being scrutinized by the content that we create, because podcasting is now the media. It's not this upstart kind of fringe thing that's happening. Is that online content now is the media now. It's what millions of people could potentially hear or see. So that scrutiny that had applied to legacy media just is being applied to online content now increasingly.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned about attention, or it's an attention economy these days. Everybody wants to get the attention. The products want to get the attention. The influencers want to get the attention of people, and somewhere I believe the direction is a bit, I would say, diverted from what the original objective of this video was, to share probably some valuable ideas, thoughts, because recently I came across a news in which it was mentioned there was a girl who was a good student, but was, I think she was into research or something. She was not making a lot of money with the normal stuff that she was doing, but when she created an only fans account, she was able to get a good amount of money. So she left what she was doing as a part of her education, which could have led to more research and probably some innovative ideas development, to something that just is short term and gives money in the short term. So I think that aspect uh, uh, is something that good influencers or good creators should be taking responsibility of, to spread awareness. Or what do you think, should there be any regulations by the government to stop this type of intervention by influencers, that there are no limits to what they can share? So I think the borderline is sort of sinning a lot now. And I think you must have seen this as well. Mark Zuckerberg was called to the Senate in the US to explain about what the Instagram platform was showing to the small kids and all. So do you think this should be regulated, or given the fact that it is free media these days, it, it 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 doesn't matter even if we try stopping it?
Yeah, well, I think it's a very complex topic that it is really hard to parse out completely. And, and I think that's why it's been a challenge for these social platforms to navigate this question, because I think, at least in the US, we have a culture of free speech, and being able to say what's on our mind. What's changed, though, is that for most of the years that the United States has existed, and this concept, the First Amendment around free speech, is that we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have online kind of capability to reach global audiences by being on a microphone. And most of that was pretty controlled and only available through a limited set of content provider channels that could be more controlled by the FCC, or more controlled, and more easily kind of filtered, right? But now we live in a world of user generated content, and that does open the Pandora's box of sorts, especially when you combine that with the First Amendment, right? That we should all be able to express ourselves freely. But it's always been that we can express ourselves freely, but the First Amendment doesn't protect us from the consequences of free expression. Yes, I think this whole topic of kind of online censorship is a very complicated topic. And if you start looking at it on a global scale, it becomes even more complicated because, you have different cultures, different societies, different values around the world. And those oftentimes can conflict with whatever is being shared. And it's not and that's kind of what we're seeing in the world today is we're seeing a lot of information that's being shared that different types of people, different origins, different understandings of culture don't agree with these things, and they take offense to it, or they think it's an attack on them. And that's what's different about now versus, like maybe 20 years ago, is that, all of us have a voice. Look at what we're doing right now. So it's a great example of the complexity of that topic. I'm not in favor of censoring any speech, but I do worry that some speech can be very harmful. It can incite violence. It can cause people to do things that maybe are harmful to themselves and harmful to others if they start really kind of taking that information and taking it to the real world beyond just, words.
Mm. So I think the impact of social media is no more just in the online world. It has very much penetrated into our real lives. If someone, let's say, tweets something today that becomes a big matter, people might end up, let's say, companies might end up losing their share values if something negative is going online. Or
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would say the best example of all of this is Elon Musk. I would say the last year and a half or so. Talk about a guy that really believes in expressing himself, no matter what the topic is, and he hasn't been excluded from consequences for his speech. And so I think it's a lesson that all of us can learn. But there's dangers in expressing yourself too freely. If you have a job or a career, and if that speech conflicts with your employer or conflicts with law enforcement, or there can be consequences.
Yeah. And I think again it brings us to the question: what is right or what is wrong? Who is there to decide? As when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he said the word is free now, but who will interpret whether it is free or not?
Right. Well, I think every human has a certain amount of biases, and his speech should be protected here in the U.S., but not every country in the world has a First Amendment. So, and I think this is happening a lot in the UK right now, and happening in other countries around the world where governments and organizations and people are objecting to certain things being shared.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really important perspective that we talked about, and probably is relevant for anybody who is willing to enter or is already a part of the media domain, trying to prepare some content so that they are aware of what could be shared and what could be relevant for the audience, and how they could be creating lasting impact. Uh, I wanted to get an understanding of the idea that since the AI generated content is, as you mentioned, probably the worst content that could exist in the AI history, as in the coming years down the line, people would see. For example, if you look at 50 or 60 years back, how the life was earlier, uh, they would probably laugh. Okay, they used to travel in such types of cars, they used to do all this. manually. They used to go to the offices to pay the bills and all that. Now it could be just done on a phone with a tap. And probably in the future, the next generations are going to be laughing at us that, okay, they used to do all this, they used to put in all this of an effort to do the work. I would like to understand from you. Uh, there's a feeling which often comes in the mind of creators, no matter if they are into media or they're writing a book or they're doing anything. Why won't outsource everything to artificial intelligence? Because it is day by day getting better and better. Sometimes I wonder where the probable limit could be. For example, if you're writing a book today, AI might give you the first draft. After a few years, probably it will just generate the book better than you could have imagined. You just give a few prompts. So, where do you think the importance of creativity or imagination of human mind would be relevant in the coming years?
Yeah, I think the big thing that I'm increasingly starting to worry about when it comes to AI created content is that is there going to be some sort of a relationship between the topic that we just talked about around censorship that's going to apply to AI increasingly, where there will just be certain topics that it won't generate, right? So you can put it in a script and give it to AI and have it do it, but there may be limits within the AI that will limit your ability to have any kind of free speech. And if the creator of the AI platform has put algorithms in it that put their thumb on the scale of what can be talked about and what could be shared, then we are shifting um, our trust over to the AI, and we're potentially removing that human element, right, which doesn't have uh, that algorithm, right, that has been put into those platforms to generate safe content, right? So I think that there's a risk area here, and I think that's why it's going to be a hybrid model. I think what's going to happen is that creators, and I'm moving this direction myself. I think I said earlier in the show is where I'm going to use AI to create some content, but I'm also going to continue to create human generated content that's maybe have a little bit of support for creating that through AI, but it's not going to rely on it entirely. Um, because I do think that there are going to be some filters that apply to this that maybe make AI content kind of conform to acceptable speech, and and that's the part that I kind of am concerned about. It is that the AI may be putting words in my mouth or removing words from my mouth if I use it to create a clone version of whatever content that I want to create.
Or probably somebody's writing a book, they would publish it and later realize if they wrote it using AI that I never thought of writing this, but it is there on my name in my book just because I used AI to write it. And probably this is going to be seen more often in the coming years down the line, because if we ask AI to write, let's say like Dale Carnegie, it would just mimic that writing style and give you the beautifully crafted book as a he would have written it with your ideas.
Yeah, I'm going to be labeling each of my content that I'm creating um, as human or AI Rob. So it'll be so that's the context. So I want to make sure that the audience knows that this is AI for a couple of reasons. One is for the reason I just told you,
Okay.
is that it may not be as frank or honest or transparent as the human side. So, and it may not have the flaws or the pauses or the hesitation, even though more and more people are using AI with human content to remove flaws and hesitations and um, mistakes in the content and making very tightly edited content using AI. My worry about that is it going to at some point have filters also? So we may come into a time where if if you want to put out your thoughts, authentic your thoughts that are not going to be impacted by any kind of an algorithm, you're going to have to record that old school. You're going to have to record everything in like what we're doing right now and not necessarily have it run through an AI filter of sorts that can edit it or change things, or because it's going to have that ability too. If you run video or audio through these AI algorithms, at some point it may actually just change what you say. And I think that is one of the things that I'm worried about, and that's why this hybrid model I think is important.
Okay. You mentioned a lot about the hybrid model which you use in the content generation part, and I think uh, probably you have been a part of this media journey for a very long period of time because of which you are using it. New creators, we don't know. There are many YouTube channels in which they are simply sitting. We don't know if it's that real person who is sitting or is it the AI clone. So
Yeah, that's why I'm really strong in the identification part. I wasn't that way not that long ago where I felt strongly about it, but I keep hearing this conversation about human reaction to AI generated content, and I think one of the big things that people push back against is the fact that they're going to be fooled somehow, right? Or they're going to not realize that they're watching a artificial human here.
yeah.
And I've changed my thoughts on this. I do think that humans need to know that, but increasingly we're creating content for AI. I know I've been shifting this thought process as well, is that my future audience is not necessarily humans. My future audience is going to be AIs. And how does that change the way I think about what I'm doing with content? And what's the influence of my humanness into content that will be consumed by AI as well? And because that's going to be important, because if the AI is going to drive attention to my human content, it's going to have filters in it that will filter against certain topics. So this is the other element of this that will create potentially a censorship infrastructure here, is that even if you create human, authentic, real spoken word content, there's the possibility that it will never see the light of day beyond just direct human delivered content. It may not be delivered through AI platforms, which, as we shift to more consumption and usage of AI platforms to gather our content, maybe even consume content, I'm hearing talk that these LLMs will be consumption platforms and directory platforms for content. And I think people are starting to use that right now. So if you think about how people have always used Google, that is coming to the OpenAI platform, Chat GPT, Perplexity, Grok, all these, where people are using it to learn information and find media. And you have to decide, if you're creating content that goes against the algorithm, you may not be findable in those platforms. And if everybody's using those platforms, I mean, eventually I think YouTube is going to essentially be built into these AI platforms. And a lot of the content discovery that's going to happen is going to happen inside of these AI LLMs. And that's how it's going to change. People aren't going to necessarily go to YouTube directly. So, you know, it's a very changing landscape I'm seeing coming. I also see YouTube building in a lot of AI related content creation tools. So if you look at 2026, they announced all sorts of new tools that are AI derivative tools to analyze and to create shorts from your videos inside of YouTube. and to also have host read, dynamic ad insertion. So increasingly, YouTube is going to be integrating, I think, with these agentic platforms that will streamline the publishing and the consumption of content. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this works with humans. It may not even be possible to publish a human piece of content in the future. That's another question.
Sort of an interesting time wherein the preparer and the consumer both is AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I think nobody's talking about that topic, but it's possible at some point in the future, under 5 to 10 years, that what we're doing right now won't even be able to be done. So any content would have to be generated or filtered by AI in order before it can be published.
So anybody who is into the journey of content preparation, or the new age content preparers, or somebody who has been doing it for a while, or somebody who wants to do it, what skills do you think would be relevant for them at this point of time so that they can constructively collaborate with AI? Because we never know uh, uh, in the upcoming years, let's say a bombshell like ChatGPT comes again, and then it completely transforms everything. Uh,
Yeah.
AGI, for example, is something that a lot of people are talking about. Artificial general intelligence. We never know when it is coming, but if it comes, it's going to be changing the game a lot. So, at least with current level of awareness, what all things do you think would be relevant for somebody who is willing to start or is already in the journey?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bumpy ride here for the next 5 years of change, and people are going to have to be adaptable and push the envelope to some degree on this. But that may cause these platforms to crack down sooner, and that may be what we see happen. So it's increasingly challenging, I think, for a new creator to get off the ground and get their legs and get foundation to what they're doing because of the rapid change. And oftentimes, this change is happening, and most creators and most people don't even know that it's happening yet. It's likely something that is going to hit them at some point when there's some sort of a pushback before they realize it may have already happened, right? So if you're starting out, it's increasingly becoming a very data-driven media creator landscape that involves a lot of testing, involves a lot of kind of data analysis to achieve success too. And that's another direction that I'm increasingly thinking about and moving towards too, is that you can't always rely on your gut instincts, your human gut instincts, to apply to your content or to apply to your marketing or apply to what you're doing in the world, which is, really kind of unfortunate. But if you're living in a world of algorithms that plays by a certain set of rules, you have to adapt to that if you want to be successful in that platform. Or you can decide to go completely rogue. And this is where open RSS comes into play, is that it is possible to publish content out there that isn't dependent on algorithms. And that is another development that's happening in the podcasting. It's been here all along, but publishing content into private communities, which may not have that level of control and censorship. It's only the big public platforms that you have to be worried about around publishing into, because you're going to be impacted by these filters and these algorithms. But if you have direct relationships with viewers and things like that, it's going to be more difficult for that content to be filtered against.
Okay. So I think we need to be, let's say, striking a balance between using AI app versus, totally ignoring it as well. We need to be having a proper balance so that
Right.
uh, we know how to use this. I would say it's just like a self-driving car. You cannot completely rely on it by just sitting and then going on a highway. Uh, there has to be some check.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting kind of connection you just made. I own a Tesla myself and have the whole full self driving capability. And while I agree with you that's where we are right now, I would say, but in 2 years, um, they're actually going to be selling cars because it's already a, a car is already being made right now that doesn't have pedals and a steering wheel. So, I mean, it's it's not if, it's when. And I think that the whole kind of cyber cab thing from Tesla is coming. And that car won't have a steering wheel, it won't have a brake pedal, it won't have a gas pedal. Well, it's not even a gas pedal, it's a power pedal is what I call this. Um, but it's that's the world that we're coming into, and that has complications too. That's going to present changes to our society and our culture that are hard for people to comprehend right now. But once these cars be fully autonomous robots, then it changes a lot of things. It very rapidly. It may also mean that the cars can drive much faster. It also means that if the cars are able to communicate to each other, that they can avoid accidents. Uh, there's a lot of potential, I guess, benefits, but there's also some other aspects of this that may not be a benefit. If you can envision our roadways around us, where autonomous cars are driving around at twice the speed limit because they're just so good at driving that they don't have to go 25 miles an hour in a 25 zone, then it also creates a safety issue for humans, right? Um, because if someone's trying to cross the road and there's a car driving 50 miles an hour down a 25-mile-an-hour area, because it's capable to do it safely, then that presents other challenges, whether it be sound impacts, possible pedestrian issues. So you can kind of see, but the benefit is that you're going to be able to go from one place to another much quicker, right? So there's time savings there. Plus, you don't have to drive the car. All you have to do is sit in the car, and you can play games or watch YouTube or do conference calls or whatever while you're driving, right?
I think, and it expands to every aspect today of our lives. For example, let's say, if we take the car analogy to the social media part, there would be a vast chunk of the content would be AI generated. You can even generate what you would like to see. You would want to see this actor doing this. You would want to see a race car,
Yeah.
whatever it would be. Like,
Well, that's probably where it ultimately goes, is the fact that each viewer or consumer of the content can have an influence in what the content is, and it could be dynamically generated for them. So, and especially if I have created a digital avatar of Rock Greenlee, maybe that digital avatar can do a phone call with you like this.
okay.
And since it knows me at a very deep level, but the question is, are we kind of replacing ourselves into a different realm of non-human existence? And is that ultimately where all this is going?
Probably the humans. I don't know where the end point of this is going to be. Like,
There is an end point. I think it's going to continue to evolve, and once we get to the level of super intelligence, or that is probably more connected to quantum computing, everything is going to change. It's once we get to quantum computing and super intelligence, then nothing is off the table. Everything is up in the air at that point. Is superintelligence going to recreate everything that we know in the world? Is it going to solve disease? Is it going to solve, light speed travel? Is it going to, is there any kind of a limit to what superintelligence can actually accomplish? Once it gets a handle on deep concepts around physics and biology and all of these key areas of knowledge that humans have been trying to develop over time, it'll be able to solve problems that humans have not been able to solve because we just didn't have the synergistic compute to solve those problems. But AI is going to have very, very deep access to non-human data. And I think that's the key to superintelligence, is that it's going to have feelers everywhere about the natural world, the biological world, as well as the human world. And in order for it to back up and manage and innovate into those areas, it's going to have to understand those areas at a level that's never been possible before. And that's called surveillance.
And a very deep level.
Penetration becomes so deep that we are not able to differentiate whether we are living in reality or in an AI generated world. Like, I think Bill Gates recently he said smartphones would be replaced by smart tattoos in the coming years, wherein the tattoos are going to be having insights about what's going inside your body. You will be able to communicate with anybody with just those tattoos on your body. Like, probably a day eventually is going to come when humans are just going to be required to sit on a chair. They can easily travel any place by just sitting there. They can easily imagine or do, or let's say experience, watch a movie, uh, probably even fitness, by just being at that one place.
Yeah. Well, and this whole concept of hypersonic travel is also being talked about right now, where you could potentially in less than an hour you could go from the east coast of the U.S. to Europe. The question is, well, what's the technology that's going to accomplish that? Is it going to be like a tunnel, or a vacuum tunnel that doesn't have any air resistance in it? Is it going to be some sort of a teleportation technology that the superintelligence will be able to figure out how to do? So, I think we're talking about concepts that are multi-decades away, but nothing is off of the table here, I don't think. And that's what has a lot of people scared, is that they don't know what's right around the corner and what's going to hit them, and is there aliens? And are aliens behind all this?
Yeah, there are conspiracy theories about area phenomena.
Right. There's a lot of people that feel like that the aliens have been here for a long time, because it's not easy to get here. But then again, how did they get here, and why did they stay? There's a lot of questions. How come we haven't seen them? How come they've stayed hidden? There's a lot of questions about whether or not they even exist. So, and but superintelligence will be able to figure that out, I think.
So it will be able to solve that Fermi paradox.
Yeah, right. Solve why the pyramids have all that infrastructure underneath them, right?
Yeah, and probably in the future sometime creating an experience of, if we would like to experience how the life was 500 years ago from from this time, you could just wear a virtual reality headset and go back to that world, feeling actually how the thing used to be that time.
Well, and how the early Egyptians were able to build those massive pyramids. How were they able to move those 100-ton blocks of granite, right? How were they able to do that back then when it's not even really possible to do it now with our modern technology.
So I think, yeah, an interesting aspect which we can have a discussion about in
But you could talk on this topic forever, I think. Yeah.
Great. So I think it has been really nice speaking with you, Rob. I would like to, towards the end, ask you a very, I think, burning question, and the question is: everybody at some point in our lives think, let's say, of creating an impact that matters. Probably by doing something that we love doing, or probably by doing something that the society or people at large would need. uh, what, according to your experience, could be something that anybody who has ever thought of or would like to create an impact that goes beyond just their individual identity of doing the job, doing the work, and then just living a normal life? What do you think could be something that such a person should be keeping in their mind, and what type of effort or mindset should they be having if they really want to create something or create an impact?
Yeah, I think the big thing that we're moving into right now is all of us need to be builders. And that applies to a business, but it also applies to creating an independent life, right? I think a lot of us grew up in an era, I know I did, where, you get a job and everything is going to work out for you because there's, steady income. I think we're moving into an era of ownership and assets that if you can accumulate, you will have lifelong kind of stability or financial resources. And I'm not sure this employment paradigm is going to maintain and hold up. If you look at what's happening with AI, AI is going to replace a lot of employees at companies. So you have to start thinking about your life as how can you build something that utilizes AI that adds value to others. Now, granted, there's other opportunities too, like this concept I keep hearing about, being a person that uses their hands, like a plumber or an electrician or whatever, is a path to kind of more of financial security. But I think longer term, I think owning assets is really the key. I think we're going to go through a big monetary shift here soon. I think it's increasingly difficult to live a life in employment. So that, because AI is going to take away a lot of jobs, but it's going to create opportunities too. And that's really what I'm talking about, is that you have to start thinking about creating opportunities in your life that maybe are tapping into this wave of AI technology and using agents to automate more things, more kind of what I would call kind of drudgery in your life that are very repetitive tasks that can maybe streamline your life to do things that are kind of taking away your life experience and enabling you to do things that are aligned more with your human interests. So I think that's the thing that I would start thinking more about, because I'm just not sure that working for an employer long term is something that's going to be available to most people.
Mm. So I believe instead of just following the traditional path of employment and then getting settled for less, uh, but just thinking or having a mindset, if I get a job, everything will be set. Uh, Instead of doing that, focusing more on creation, especially when we have these tools these days. Uh, because although there are, I think, risks, but there are beautiful things that we could have never imagined that are coming out of AI. For example, Sora, right? We can generate images which we can imagine, which be very difficult to create otherwise. So
Yeah, I think you tapped into a very important point there with that, is that AI is going to create content that humans probably won't be able to create. So it's this or be willing to create, or have the skills to create, or have the knowledge to create. And so that's why it's important to have this hybrid strategy, is that if you want to drive the most value to your audience, you need to find a way to use AI to help you drive that value to your audience. That's in addition to your humanness, which you should bring that authenticity and that realness and that connection and trust. Because the AI content's not going to be as trusted. It'll be like how people are using AI today. It's just a resource, and it's like a search tool of sorts to gather information. But the humans will still have to filter that information. Is it relevant to their lives? This is the tension between this, and that's why it's important to do both.
Okay, and probably it's like becoming like Iron Man, Tony Stark, wherein you have the ability to use the tools to increase your abilities instead of just leaving everything on the tool to do, or perform things by itself.
Yeah, it's probably going to solve our human health problems too, if we let it. But is it going to always make the right choices on that is the question that I keep asking. But I've been increasingly using it to analyze my 100 blood test markers and give me feedback on what it sees, because it's the synergy effect of all of those health markers and interpretation of how they interact with each other is the most important part that I oftentimes don't get from the doctors. So I think a lot of people cringe that that a person would upload that information to one of these platforms. But I've increasingly seen the ability with Chat GPT to create private information and public information, as long as I'm explicit about it in my queries, where I can train it to know and utilize public information just by using the term public or private in the prompt, or to upload a document to it and identify it as private, or upload a document and say, like my resume or something like that, and say, make that public. And the AI, from what I gather, will comply with that. It's probably not perfect at it right now. There's probably a certain amount of hallucinations that go on around, regurgitating that information to someone else that may do a query. Like if somebody went into Chat GPT, and it could be anybody around the world, and type in, what is Rob Greenlee's bio? All right. Or his history or his career. Will that AI bot have an answer to that? Right. That's accurate. That is information that I gave it permission to make available. Right. So that's increasingly how I'm thinking about AIs. It's a permission-based relationship. And it appears that it has that capability built into it. So the AI will give me a monthly report. Automatically, it's scheduled into its processes to give me a regular report on information that is public and private. And we jointly review that information, and I have to make decisions if I want to keep it public or make something private. So there's a review process that goes on with it that I've learned is built into it. I hope that most people know that.
I think many people don't know about that it has the ability of having this control mechanism for functioning. So I think we have the tool. We need to learn how to use it effectively.
Yeah. Also, it's going to use you.
Yeah.
In ways that you may not necessarily want it to, right? I mean, if you're uploading, let's say, your health records to it and having it analyze it, I don't know that you want to make that stuff public, if you know what I mean. So,
yeah. So I think it has been a very nice conversation with you, Rob. Especially we touched on many aspects related to media, storytelling, and AI, and how the future is going to be looking like. which is probably an area we can have a detailed discussion sometime else about as well. I think there's a lot that we can talk about. This is an interesting area, and I think it has been a really insightful conversation. As when somebody listening to it or watching this would definitely get some insights on what the industry has shifted from, especially the media industry. How you, as a viewer or as a creator, can leverage the artificial intelligence tools to probably get insights or to share insights that would create an impact. So towards the end, Rob, I would like to ask if you would like to share some final thoughts with our viewers, listeners, anybody who would, want to get one set of final insight or anything that you would like to share.
Yeah, I'm just, I guess, wanting to mention that what the future looks like is, to some degree, what we make it. But yet, on the other hand, I think it's a different world now. Technology has always changed the world. Back when I did my nationally syndicated radio show called Web Talk Radio, the whole concept of that radio show was all about talking about the evolution and development of the internet and the web and the difference between the internet and the web, right? And talking about email, talking about how we were becoming a global community and how bandwidth was going to become fast and ubiquitous. And all those things have come to pass. So I think what we all have to realize is that the impacts of what we're talking about with AI are coming. We don't always know now, just like back then, I didn't know for sure how things were going to turn out. But I think that there are lessons to be learned from the past that can be applied to the future. But we are in a completely different era now, just like what we were just prior to the internet. We just didn't really fully grasp what the impacts were. And people were craving information to try and understand how their lives were going to change and be different. And there's been various times in our history where we've gone through the Industrial Revolution and we've made these big shifts, and it caused people to lose their jobs. It caused people to have to transition and learn something new. And it gave opportunities to people to innovate in those worlds, right? In the changing landscape of what's happening. And I think that's the key takeaway here is that these changes are coming. We don't 100% know what they're going to look like. All we can do is kind of speculate on that. But and this applies to being a podcaster, a creator, or just living your daily life, is that these changes are coming. There's going to be good sides to them and there's going to be bad sides to them. There's going to be aspects of it that are going to be taken advantage of and maybe seen as negative. And there's going to be aspects of it that are going to be seen as positive and interesting and helpful, right? So the same thing happened with the internet. And I think that's what we're seeing happen right now with AI, is that it's going to change our society in ways that we don't fully grasp right now. But increasingly, people are starting to see little glimpses and signs of what those changes could be. And there's a lot of speculation right now going on. So each one of us kind of, I think it's important to start getting focused on our perception of what those changes are and how we need to adapt to what those changes will be, so we can be effective and be helpful to our families and be living a life of meaning and be able to hold on to the standard of living that we want to maintain. And some of these choices, I think, are going to be very hard for many people to understand and accept and be willing to make those changes and those steps in their lives and the structure of their lives to adapt to what's coming. And I worry that there's going to be a lot of people left behind and not be able to understand what's ahead. And I think it's important to understand what's ahead as much as you can, because there's dangers that could come from what's ahead that you need to do your best to avoid.
Okay, I think a very powerful insight that comes out of your statement is uncertain times are ahead. We need to be adaptive. We have to be aware of what's coming up, and probably keep updating ourselves. We never know what or who might be the next target of AI, saying tomorrow, this automation has come now. Your job is at risk, which is happening.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on your show. It was good talking about these topics. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rob, for coming and sharing your wonderful insights, especially when you have such a long of an experience of this media industry, especially given the fact that you are already very much involved in the usage of the new age tools, which a lot of times we get into our comfort zones thinking why we need to be updating ourselves, or why we need to be even aware of the new age tools, or why do we need to even adapt. But you are a living example of why adaptability is important and how it can shape your future. So thank you so much, Rob, for sharing your insights. It was really nice speaking with you.
Thanks.
Looking forward to having probably more conversations on some interesting topics that we touched a bit on today.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you.